Right. Okay. So then when you hit that record button, you should see some like three dots on to your far right that'll say more, and then you hit those.
Uh, yes.
And then it should say like stream live on Facebook, YouTube. It should give you those options.
It does. It just says pause recording, stop recording, breakout rooms.
No, go further. Do you see your reaction button? Look
Yeah.
to your right.
That's
You see
yeah.
reaction.
Yeah.
Okay, so directly to the right of reaction, you should see more. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so hit more,
And then that's what came up.
and then you see live on Facebook.
I has it has pause, recording, stop recording, breakout room.
Okay, so
Okay, we wasting too much time, so we're gonna go ahead and
okay,
I'm a record. It's recording now, so we're gonna go ahead and get started.
okay. Can you see the people trying to enter the room?
Okay, I got her. Yes, I have her.
Okay, so we're ready to get started.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Savannah Wanzer, the founder of May Is and Trans Pride. Tonight, our topic is a serious topic that hits so many different communities now, but we would like to focus just on the transgender community, how for years and years, just by living our truths by our loved ones, we have been judged and killed and murdered tragically just because we want to be who we are. We have a dynamite panel and we are getting ready to get started. First, I would like to introduce Kiara St. James, and she's from New York City, and she will be giving you information about her and some things that she has been that is working on to making sure that we can feel a little bit safer walking the streets of New York City. Kiara, welcome.
Thank you, Goddess. So, hello, once again, my name is Kiara St. James, and I like to also say Jambo. You know, Jambo is Swahili word for hello. Really want to make sure that we are normalizing non-European languages in these spaces as well. I'm a founder and executive director of New York Transgender Advocacy Group, an organization that I created because I knew the importance of making sure that Black and brown trans women got acclimated to understanding policies. And the root causes of a lot of our social disparities is not because we're Black, or Latina, and are trans, it's because of discriminatory policies that has historically disenfranchised us. And so oftentimes, the only jobs that we were really relegated to do and really make a good living off of, if we're lucky, is sex work. And I'm not ashamed to say that for many years, I survived as well as thrived as a sex worker. Some of the work that we're doing in New York City, you know, I'm very proud of a lot of the legislative wins we've gotten over the past 2 years. Back in January 2019, we saw gender signed into law here in New York State. And so Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act is what I call the trans and gender non-conforming, gender non-binary civil rights bill, right? It's a bill that allows all of us who reside in New York State to bask in the sunshine of equality, have access to healthcare, housing, employment. It's a way to discourage discrimination and harassment. And so I'm very proud of that very hard win. It took some 17 years to win that. Yes, no, thank you. So the other wins we got back in 2019, minor consent. Minor consent is very important for TGNC NB youth, right? To have autonomy over their bodies, how they want to affirm their bodies is really essential. What we have been seeing over the past few years is like we have some over, and I'm gonna try to slow down because I know with interpreters, I'm a fast talker, so my apologies. So there's been some 320 legislative policies that are anti-trans in their leaning. And so what these policies are about are denying trans and gender nonconforming, gender non-binary people access to all the things I talked about before. But specifically right now, they are targeting our youth, young trans girls who are participating in girls' sports. And so currently, Tennessee, Arkansas have passed policies that makes it illegal for trans girls to participate in girls' sports in their school systems. And so that's one of the reasons why policies are important. Policies are like, it addresses root causes, is really the foundation to build our community on, right? It improves our quality of life through policies. But I also understand, gender was like a 17-year fight. So we also make sure, we also are very sensitive to the needs of the community now. We currently have gotten like several grants in regards to COVID-19 relief for TGNC New Yorkers. I'm currently working on, because I'm very embarrassed and like outraged that in New York City over the past year, 9 Black and brown trans women have been murdered in New York City. In New York City, that's right. And I remember being very upset because back in 2019, there was a white passing trans woman on the Harlem subway platform who was being harassed, and it was videotaped. And every white elected official came out and said, there is no room for hate in New York City. And yet, 9 Black and brown trans women have been murdered in silence. And so one of the things I wanted to do to address that is I reached out to one of my amazing senators who has been a champion of a lot of TGNC policies and legislations, Senator Brian Benjamin's office, to work on a brochure called Protect Black and Brown Trans Women. And so that's gonna be, we're in the final stages of having it completed. We're gonna have a rally in Harlem, because one of the things we have to start doing as Black and brown TGNC folks is we need to keep up, what I like to say, keep up that same energy in the hood, right? Too often, we're very comfortable going into spaces, white spaces, cis white queer spaces, and yelling and screaming at white folks, but they're not the ones who are killing us, right? And we need to make sure that we keep that same energy up in our neighborhoods. We need to make sure also that we are cultivating relationships, not just with our elected officials, but with our faith-based ministries. We must get them involved in no longer being silent when Black and brown trans women are murdered. And that's gonna be very essential. And so I'm very excited. The rally is gonna be probably sometime in June. I will send all that information out to folks, and definitely will have some virtual capacities for folks to join virtually. One of the other things that I am working on with another amazing Black trans woman here in New York City by the name of Nala Simone is we will be mobilizing and actually having a protest in front of the United Nations in another week. And that's in regards to anti-LGBTQIA legislations in Uganda. One of the beauties about living in New York City is that we are the center of the world, right? We are the capital of the world, crossroads of the world. These are the things that are said about New York City. So residing in New York City It is unacceptable for anyone who lives in New York City who calls themselves an activist, a social justice warrior, not to be concerned about our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world that does not have the same privileges that we do in New York City. So we're going to be mobilizing, protesting in front of the United Nations, as well as the Ugandan embassy, to bring attention to the murders of 10 trans women in Uganda. And so these are very serious times for all of us. You know, we continue to see a global epidemic of murders of TGNC folks around the world. But one of the things that I take hope in is that we have so many allies, right, that we just have to reach out and have these conversations with. And so I will be sharing with everyone who's part of this amazing Zoom panel today, updates on the rally that's going to be happening in Harlem, as well as a protest scheduled for next Friday in front of the United Nations. And yeah, I think that is, did I answer was there a question that you asked me, Savannah, specifically?
It was the introduction and you covered it, you nailed it.
Thank you. And so do I pass it on to?
Yes, pass it on to whoever's to your right, the next person.
Well, I'm like in the middle, like Brittany Crunch, and I'm in the middle.
Okay, go ahead, Frida, go ahead, baby. Give us a little introduction about yourself. And
okay, hello everybody. My name is Frida Ortiz. I'm from Mexico City, and I'm live right now here in Mexico. I used to live in DC, in Washington DC, for 22 years, and I used to work for Nova Salud organization, doing some volunteers for with my walker, and I used to work in some drag shows. I mean, on the nights, you know, like the nighttime, doing in all the bars around the area, and what else? And I used to help all my community, try to help the new trans, try to help people that they don't have any chance to get a jobs, and to be with the families and all kind of things, depressions, and you know. So now here in Mexico, I don't have a lot of things to do right now because nothing is open from the pandemic, but I try to be with some organizations because I used to fight for my papers on USA, and I used to be in a detention for 2 years and a half, and now I wanna help the other girls that we don't have to move around, and we can stay here, because also my country, they start to have a lot of opportunities for us. I mean, like, we get the papers, we get your legal papers, your change name. We got a lot of things right now, and this is what I want to do. So I don't know, hopefully I can do soon, right? After the pandemic is finished.
yes.
Because it's hard when you be in a detention and be like trans and pass all these things around there. So I don't want another girl live what I was living on that place. And hopefully I can do something. Hopefully I will be happy to share my experience with everybody, and see that we can be somebody on our countries, you know, when on our places, on our home. We need to shoulder we need to teaching our families and our friends who are who we are, you know, and don't be scared, and and don't put their lives on risk, because a lot of trans, this is why they die, because I mean they go around, and they get the bad experience, they get the bad friends, the wrong people, and then it's when they start to do crazy things. So this is why I'm here. I try to help. I try to share what I've been doing, and I think, I mean, I've been here for 1 year and I'm good. A lot of people, I remember a lot of people when they know I'm gonna be deported, everybody was like, "Oh my God, they're gonna killing you," and I was like, "No, I'm still here. I'm still here, but I'm going to the right way, right way, you know."
Yes.
So I'm happy. I'm happy to I'm happy with me, with my person, and I'm happy to show all the world that I'm here, and that I can do a lot of good things, you know. So that's it. We'll see. We're gonna do it. So who is the next one?
Derek.
Derek.
Thank you. Good evening. Yeah, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world or whenever you see this. My name is Derek. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I am the executive director of Ubuntu Incorporated. We're based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Um, in our first couple of years, we've done some supportive services by way of group, moving some mutual aid to folks and things like that. We have some really big initiatives coming up that we're getting ready to unleash, and I'm super, super excited. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that we have to get through. So I can't say too much, but I'm super, super excited. So and I'm gonna plug my social media once, and then I'll plug it again at the end of this. Follow us on social media at it's the @ symbol Ubuntu 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 Inc. on Instagram. That's where we're the most active, and then it's just Ubuntu Incorporated or Ubuntu Inc. on Facebook. But that's where we're the most active. We're trying to get active on Twitter, but that's a young folks thing. Just kidding. I'm 29, but yeah. So we do a lot of work with the trans masculine side of the spectrum as far as trans folks go, and we also do work with the spouses of trans men. We also have a group that meets for the spouses of trans feminine folks. That's on I think this every Tuesday. Just the Fellas meets every third Wednesday, and SOTI, which is spouses of trans individuals, for the spouses of trans men, meets every Wednesday. It's meeting right now, actually. So that's just a little bit about what we have going on. Yeah. Pass it back to Savannah.
Hello, everybody. Well, we can start getting into our conversation about stop fucking killing us. I'm angry right now because things are happening for no reason at all. And we have to speak up for us while we are able to speak up. It's a lot of political things that go on when people don't care until they hit their vote ability. When someone's threatened that they're going to be removed from their office, then they try to step in to try to help our community. But I want to know steps that individual groups should take to make sure that this is legalized in their states, a place of living, and who represents them, and also how youth can get involved, because it's that youth age that's the greatest targeted up to the age of 25. So I want us to talk about methods of what we can do to stop this madness? What's the first steps that we would want to take? Derek?
Clearly I was muted. So I think one of the first things that we can do is reduce the stigma that exists around transgender people existing as a whole. There's a whole we talk about HIV stigma a lot in different spaces, but we don't discuss enough the stigma that exists when you're transitioning. I can speak from the perspective of someone who transitioned from female to male. Just speaking on my familial experience, it was like this thing that nobody wanted to talk about. There was all these whispers and nobody would directly approach me. And if they did, it was a question about my genitalia and what I plan to do with it. And so some of it is unpacking what's curiosity, what's being nosy. How can you do your own work by Googling some things, or, you know, maybe participating in free community events like this one. And that way you're not laboring trans people even more with the burden of having to teach you. Now, don't get me wrong, I consult, so, you know, hit me up. But it does at some point become a burden to constantly be asked about your genitalia or what you're doing. I'm a person before I'm anything else. I'm a person, I'm a Black man, I'm a son, I'm a nephew, I'm all these different things. Trans is an adjective, just like purple, just like Black, just like tall, short, skinny. Those are adjectives. It's a thing, it's something that describes me. It's not the entirety of my being. And I think once we take away the stigma that exists from existing as a trans person, we can begin to unpack the other levels of what's leading to these senseless murders.
That's true. Anybody else have anything to say? And also, this room is just not closed to speakers only. This is open forum communication. So anybody have anything to say, they just raise their hand and I'll write their name down and we will get to you. So Frida, did you have your hands up next to say something? Or was it here?
I want to say, like, I think when we go around the world, and when we try to hide who we are, and scared about if people is gonna accepting us and something, and is when they don't respect us. I always say, like, when I go to the streets, and because I'm starting my transition like 20 years, 12 years ago. And I remember the first time when I was like, go out the streets, the only thing that I was thinking is, oh, I'm look great. And this is how I'm gonna be happy, right? I never was thinking about if somebody was angry, or somebody was thinking I'm disgusting or something. I never was thinking about. I was secure about my life, and also I was respecting everybody. I mean, I never was try to open that door when I start to play with the guys, and let them to make funny about me, because a lot of people, this is why sometimes the other people didn't stop, because we left them to make us like a clowns, and we're not clowns. We are not clowns. We are humans. And when I got here in Mexico, I'm start to be like that, and a lot of people loves me, and this is great. A lot of people say, like, oh my God, I mean, you are trans, and they ask me, hey, why you are trans? And I teaching them. I show them. I don't get embarrassed. I don't get mad. I don't get they not broke my feelings. No, I just tell them what is a trans, and I'm explaining to them and they can understand me. And a lot of people understand me. They's like, oh, you know what? I'm respect you, because I make them to I make them to understand that we are strong, and we have to be strong, because it's a lot of things outside and around the world. So I don't know, it's like, yeah, that's me, and this is what I try to show all the girls. I always say, like, don't be rude, even if somebody is if somebody is mean to you, don't be mean to them. It's not gonna work, right? Because this is why the hate is getting big. Because a lot of people, they think like, oh, this one, they got mad, and now, I mean, it's like crazy. No, just, we have to explain to them. We have to be patient, and we have to make them respect us. You know, of course, it's a lot of people that something they don't understand nothing, and they still hate. But they hate a lot of people. They don't hate us, only us. They hate women. They hate blacks. They hate trans. They hate gay people. So I mean, it's gonna be hard to change them, but we can change some of them.
Yeah, I definitely would say that,
Hey, Kiera,
yes.
sorry to interrupt you, but it was somebody else that raised their hand, Nikki Lee, and I think
Yes.
she wanted to speak, but Savannah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Go ahead,
Okay.
Nikki. I was on mute and I was trying to stop her too.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nikki, and Kiara, we coming right back to you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Nikki Lee from Chicago, and I'm happy to be here. I try to attend every year. Yesterday, I tuned in, but then my computer conked out, so I didn't get to attend that one, but I'm here today, and happy to see everybody. I think the question was how we can get the word out to young transgender people and LGBTQ folks. And I was just wondering if, just building on collaborations, because it's hard to do the work alone. And I heard you introduce yourself, Derek. I heard Kiara introduce herself and her program, as well as Frida. So maybe there are collaborative relationships that can be developed right here from you all connecting, because it takes a lot of people to just bring everything together and make sure that we're reaching the young population and taking those opportunities to present information through presentations, through webinars, through whatever it can be, at the different youth-serving organizations like those runaway and homeless youth programs and, various shelters and community centers and LGBTQ serving organizations, to get that word out and reach them, because they do want to know, and they are looking for opportunities to get involved and to advocate for themselves and to give them their own selves agency, but they don't always know what's going on. And certainly they don't always have the opportunity to have mentors and from people like you all, and to get that guidance and just making sure that they're moving as one and really having an agenda and strategically planning to take those next steps to make something happen. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm just so glad to be here.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you for joining us.
Now, Kiara.
So yeah, thank you, Nikki. Yeah, I think it's important also to say that we live in a society, we live in social constructs. The world that we live in is a social construct. We can agree to that, right? We can also agree to the fact that these hierarchies that exist, they exist for a reason. They exist because in a lot of human minds, right, there is this, like, I don't want to be the last one. There got to be someone lesser than me, right? And so for a lot of folks, they feel that when TGNC folks get rights, it's like, well, damn, now who are we gonna make fun of? We can't even make fun of TGNC folks now, damn, right? And so that's a fear for a lot of people. And so what I know is important for us to do is to, number one, deconstruct all this world we live in, dismantle it, right? Making sure that we go back to the history, our history, understanding that what we're taught, what our youth are taught, it is through a Western mindset that is very rigid, very narrow, and it puts people in boxes, it others us, right? And only through this, like, I guess you say the past 500 years, we've been experiencing this othering of TGNC folks who historically, before Judeo-Christianity, were not just tolerated in their indigenous communities around the world, they were accepted, we were accepted, right? And we were seen as an integral part of society. And I want folks to understand something else. In America and around the world, it's not just it's not just transphobia, and then people want to say, oh, because the Bible this, the Bible that, but also we live in a society, especially here in America, where they make it illegal for you to even be Black.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's laws that have to be enforced to say it's okay for a Black woman to wear her natural hair, right? These are social constructs that are created to dehumanize and make us feel less than. And so one of our responsibilities is to understand that and also make sure that we get involved, whether you have children or not. We must get involved with our school systems, understanding what they're teaching, what the curriculum is, because it's important for our children to also understand it's okay if they're TGNC, NB, right? It's okay if you are attracted to someone who is TGNC, NB. First of all, right? We need to normalize that shit in the school system, just like we normalize cis heteronormative relationships. The other thing we need to make sure that we are doing is cultivating relationships with our faith-based organizations. A lot of us, we are still very much spiritually inclined. We're still connected to our church family. And so we have a responsibility to find out what they are doing. Do they have any type of teachings, right? I grew up Kojic in Beaumont, Texas. And so every day of the week, there was something different going on at my church, right? And so it's up to those of us who are involved in any type of faith-based organization to find out how to make sure that at least one of the sermons that is preached is about affirming and uplifting TGNC, NB family members who are attending that church. And so these are just multi-pronged approaches that we can really start to address, because it gets really to the heart of the matter of why, as I said earlier, 9 Black and brown trans women were murdered and the churches have been silent.
Mm-hmm.
Your silence, their silence is complicity in the murders. And we need to make them understand that, right? And so this is not gonna happen overnight, but we have to dig in our heels, right? And make sure that we are reaching out to our churches, our synagogues, our mosques, our Buddha temples. We need to make sure we're also involved in the educational process in our respective states and cities, right? That's going to be really important, We need to make sure that we're involved in all of that. Too often we say, oh, well, I don't have no kids. Why should I care what they're teaching in school? But you should care. We all should care. And sorry, so I'm gonna stop right there. I ain't trying to.
Okay. All right, thank you. Before I turn it over to Derek, I want to acknowledge that we do have a couple of community members that are in the DMV area. Kiana Kanaya Walker, which is with Heart to Hands, and also Charmaine Echoes, who is also has a great story that she shares about surviving the violence against trans individuals. And we also have Consuelo Lopez. So I hope we'll get a chance to get a couple of words for them. But now we're going to turn it over to Derek. And also we want to acknowledge that we have a mental health provider, Erica, that's in the room also, that plays a wonderful role of supporting us as we have gone through mourning of loved ones that has been tragically killed too. So we must remember the hard work that our mental professionals go through, lifting us up so that we can just go on to make the best of a terrible situation. Go ahead, Derek, on to you.
Thank you, Savannah. And thank you everyone for joining us, community members, care providers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Events like this are so important because this is where we get to interact. This is where we get to learn and be in community and be in safe space with one another and ask questions about things that you may be confused about, respectful questions about things that you may want to know. And I want to say, just addressing directly the violence that is taking place specifically against trans women, is that a lot of times what I hear is, oh, well, like, especially if you see a trans woman killed and you go on the post, what you're going to see is, oh, they were trying to trick him. He should have known, whoopie whoop wop. You're going to hear that. And it's a crock because you know, but there's such a stigma attached to it that you almost feel like you have to kill this. They feel like they have to kill this secret. Not you, because y'all don't and I don't, but it's like that's the only thing that can really be inferred from it, is like you knew like what your desires were, but you feel like now you don't want anybody else to know or something, so this person doesn't deserve to live anymore. And so what I say to that is, number one, trans women, trans men, trans non-binary folks, like nobody owes you disclosure. For cis hetero people, I would say that nobody, like, we don't owe you disclosure because we're not out to trick you. We're just trying to live our lives. We don't owe you disclosure. And being out for some people is a lot of times a safety issue. It's an issue of their livelihood. It's an issue of them losing everything. It's an issue of them losing their life. So it's not safe for some people to be openly trans, and that's okay. And some people may not ever want to be openly trans, and they may want to live a very stealthy life, and that's okay too. It's nobody's job to out them because outing is violence. If you've ever participated in a conversation and you've outed somebody, you've committed an act of violence. And also, Kiara, you were saying something about people's rights. And I would say to those people who think that, oh, well, if they get rights, then it takes away such and such, for me, it's not pie. If I get rights, I just get rights, and you have rights, and we have rights, and I am not taking anything away from anybody. So, I can't, it's conversations like this get me really fired up, because sometimes I feel like, dang, like I'm trying to teach you how to be a decent human being. And sometimes when you are in those brick wall conversations, you almost feel like it can't be taught. But I'm glad to be in this space, and I'm gonna pass it off to Charmaine because she got her hand up and she's doing like this, so I know she's gonna say something. So go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, good evening, everyone. My name is Charmaine Echoes. I am lead coordinator of trans services with the Mayor Office of LGBTQ Affairs here in the District of Columbia. I've been in just to give you a little background on myself, as Savannah did mention, I am a survivor of gun violence. I transitioned a little over 5 years ago, and things were hard. I lost a very well-paying job, and I was depressed, and in the midst of that depression, Charmaine came about. But it was very hard, you know, struggling and kind of being forced into sex work. The only thing that you hear is, oh, you're a pretty girl, you're tall, you're gorgeous, and all this, and then you need to go out and make some coins, go and post the ad. So I did post the ad, was making some good money. And but I was in a situation in which I had to turn to the streets. The first day that I went on, we have two corridors down here in the District of Columbia. K Street, which is well known, that was one of the longest standing trans strolls here in DC, and Eastern Avenue, which is on the rougher side. And you know, I'm a little hood chick, and you know, I mean, I like the hood boys, you know, I like the niggas, as you say. And so I went where I like, where I attracted to it. And actually it was more money on that side. So it was like, okay, well, I can get some good, you know, some good, you know, and see some guys and get some good money while doing it. Then why not, girl? I went out there for the first time and I was shocked. And what Kiara mentioned resonated to me because where I was shot at was on the same block was a church. And and I almost died, you know, and it just baffles me because the stories in the instance in when she shot me, because it's like I kind of like blanked out. And when I came out of that trance, he was standing over top of me and was like, bitch, I should do your ass, you dumbass bitch. You see what I'm saying? And I could have died and no one would have knew my story. No one would have known, had not known that I was going out there because I was trying to get some clothes to go to a job interview. No one would have known that. And there are people would have just been saying, well, you know, and at that time, my name wasn't changed, so I probably would have possibly been misgendered. And it would have just went totally to the left. But by the grace of God, I'm still here today. And that pushed me into advocacy. And like I told everyone, I didn't choose advocacy. Advocacy chose me. It chose me, and I found my purpose in that as well. You know, is to tell others my story so they can help them find or for their purpose in life. And like we just literally got off a strategic planning meeting here with a coalition that we're building here in the District of Columbia amongst trans people, trans masculine, trans femme individuals to come up with ways. We know what the problem is. We already know what the problem is. The problems have been spoken about for years, but coming up with solutions, only solutions. I only want to hear solutions. We already know what the problems is. Let's go come up with solutions. And if that solution does not work that we come up with, okay, well, that didn't work out, but guess what? This is going to work out. We got to figure out a way to make it work for us. And just like with the whole, the title of this is Stop Killing Us. And sometimes we put ourselves in vulnerable positions in which we are more subjected to experiencing an act of violence. And there are so many opportunities for us out here, like jobs, trainings, you know, like even safer ways of sex work. OnlyFans. I had one at a point in time. I had some old videos over the years that I made with some of the guys, and I posted them and just to sit at home and just make money. That could have paid my rent because I made enough money each month that I could pay my rent just on that alone. You see what I'm saying? But we have to come up with ways and focus on them and be hard about it. Sometimes you have to be very aggressive. We have to be aggressive because we have so many tables that are offered to trans people like this. This is a national event. This whole screen should be packed, but it's the representation that we get and how can we say someone, we dare someone to like, okay, well, how can you speak about our experiences? But we're not there to speak about our own experiences. So there's more proof and more numbers. And I do have to get off quickly, but I would have felt ashamed not to be a part of this because I love Savannah. My trans community is extremely dear to me. And especially this subject matter is something that hits very close to home. You know, recently I'm in the ballroom scene as well. And that there was a girl who was in the ballroom scene who was murdered. It wasn't, you know, the usual act of violence that a lot of girls obtain, but she was murdered, period. And every time that something like that happens, it feels like a part of me is taken away. or I feel it, like I feel it, and it's just like, okay, well, Charmaine, this is why you're here. But I'm glad to be here and nice to meet you all. Um, and I look forward to seeing you all in some of the upcoming events.
Thank you so much, Charmaine, for your
Thank
kind
you.
words. And thanks for taking a moment out to show your love. Consuela, we would like you to say something. Now, Consuela works around a whole lot of youth. And there's Consuela. Could you say a couple of words on how we can strengthen our youth during times of being rejected in so many different areas and being survivors of so many different areas? Go ahead and say whatever you would like to say.
Thank you. So I think what we need to do first is learn how to be there for one another. Really understanding what a positive role model is, to be able to help our youth. Our youth look up to me. There's when I first transitioned, there wasn't really a handbook that explained how to transition. It was just taught to us in a way that was malicious in some cases, where that you would get read and be like, you're not fish, you're not cunt, you're not this, blah blah, and then it would make you go and have these transitional surgeries, that some were a back alley, or and where we didn't even know each other. We didn't address the issues that we had, as such as dysphoria and things like that back when I transitioned. um I also think that, there's that culture humility part where, here I am, a Latina trans woman, that I'm from Central America, Nicaragua, and I came here when I was 6 years old. And because I spoke English, and I spoke fluent English and fluent Spanish, I was too Americanized to hang out with just regular Latino, people that came here to this country. Then I wasn't white enough, and the only community that really, really embraced me was, trans women of color, particularly Black trans women. And they took me under their wing, and the way they showed me how to transition wasn't the way that I would say, like, Erica, the mental health specialist, would say, hey, this is what you do, you have to do it. We did it backwards. And when I say backwards, we had one doctor in Washington, D.C., that serviced all the trans women, and we sort of found a way to transition. And that message got lost somewhere down the line, where, instead of us showing our youth how to do things and go things about the right way, we sometimes like to be messy. We sometimes like to be, we like to be put in those situations where, like being out on the strip, being out on the stroll, doing this, doing that, and in some cases, our youth look at us and they say, well, if she does it, then I should do it. So where does that come, where we change the way that our youth look at us, and and try to teach a way for them to be stirred in the direction of success, where us as trans women, each other within the city, within the community, sometimes aren't there for each other. The lack of support amongst trans women, amongst ourselves, is lacking as well. And I think, the newer generation that's coming out with the youth, we have to show them a different way, on how to become more inclusive with each other, how to help each other, how to uplift someone and not play that crabs in the barrel. And that's sort of the way that I was taught. I sometimes regret, because I carry that trauma sometimes on how I transitioned, right? I didn't transition with a doctor telling me, well, this is what you have to do, this is how you do it. I was told that I couldn't do something. I was told that I would never be, I would never look like a woman, that I would never be a real woman, that this wasn't for me. And, let alone say, this is how I was taught, and I transitioned in 1992 in Washington, D.C., where transitioning, there was only probably like a handful of girls that I had seen transition before me, and that actually did it the way that would make me want to do something. But even more so, we would go to the strip, to the stroll, to be with like people, right? And you don't necessarily wake up one day and say, oh, I want to just go into survival sex work. You sort of pushed into that. And next thing you know, you get the attraction from men and you start, understanding that, yeah, having sex with someone is someone highly sexualizing you and you can make money for it. I mean, that's where I think a situation that took place that when I think back now and I think some of the people who are from DC remember the Brass Rail, which was on the corner of 5th and K Street. And if you think about it, that was a place for us just to go and be able to be yourself, transition, or get in drags, that we would say, and wear a skirt and high heels and go to this club to be with someone where you wouldn't be judged or be looked at any differently. And then what happens? The club closes, and then you go out front just to say hi to your girlfriend or say hi to someone, and then next thing you know, you're being targeted. Right. Next thing you know, men are driving around and then they're, offering you money. And when you think about it, someone who is in a survival mode, when someone offers you money for sex and to make you feel wanted and as vulnerable as we feel when we're first transitioning, it's kind of abusive behavior to be put in situations like that. And I think we need to show our youth that, sex work is real and it's something that could put you in danger. And that is detrimental towards our life for being as trans women. So that's all I have to say.
Did anybody that was on the panel, that was picked to be on the panel, have anything to say before I call on Kanaya and Taylor? Anything that you'd like to add before I?
Yes. Thank you, Savannah. Let me make sure I'm okay. No, thank you. And thank you, Consuela, as well. I think it's really important for us to, we did a slippery slope, because I started, making a living as a sex worker, right? I really think it's important for us to make a distinction that sex work is work, right? And for those community members who are thriving in sex work, we're not trying to discourage them, right? We just want to give them opportunities and make sure that they have options, because we have to be very careful, because there are deep pockets on the other side. One of the reasons why SESTA and FOSTA got passed is because they used that, oh, they're, sex trafficking, oh, these women are being forced into sex work. And so we have to make sure when we talk about sex work and how that was one of the ways that we were given to survive, it's not used to weaponize, it's not being weaponized against us, by the opposition, and I just think it's really important to really acknowledge that. And also understanding that we live, as I said before, because of Western society, we are compartmentalized into these different categories, where in reality, we would live in a more intergenerational space, where the old, you have older TGNC folks teaching younger ones, and that the ways of knowing that clinical people can never teach our youth. The ways of knowing are passed down to our youth. And so we have to make sure that we're creating spaces where we're still able to get around, how they divide us from one another, because that's what they do. They divide youth from elders and those who have aged out of youth, right? And so then what happens is the youth are scared of the elders because there's people telling them, oh yeah, you don't want to be like them, right? And so we have to make sure that we're creating spaces that are intergenerational, so that this knowledge that is not institutional knowledge, but this is knowledge that is passed on, because as collective community members, we have collective knowledge to pass on, and so we have to make sure that we're creating those type of spaces that is not just you know, people saying, oh, you don't want to be like them, you know, they're sex workers, they're drug addicts, and da da da. Like, we need to make sure we're creating those spaces. And I'll be.
All right, Derek, you can go ahead, and then we're going to turn it over to Frida.
I love being on a panel with Kiara, especially because she's gonna give you some history. She's gonna give you some lessons. You're gonna learn something on the panel with her. So I just have to
Yes.
boost up my sister. So thank you, Savannah, for creating this space. But I want to say, and I thought Kiara was gonna say this, but since you didn't, I'm gonna beat you to it. Consuela was speaking and she said something about crabs in the barrel. And Kiara loves to say this, and it's true, that the barrel is not the crab's natural habitat. We get tricked into thinking that we have to step on each other to get places because we all get pushed into these silos, but realistically, we don't have to stay there. It's an illusion, it's a construct, if you will, and you know, the nonprofit industrial complex, society as a whole will trick us into thinking that that's our natural habitat, but it's not, and we really can do a lot if we can simply undo that mindset. And I also want to acknowledge the fact that that kind of mentality comes from trauma. It comes from a scarcity mindset. It comes from a like, oh, well, if they do that, then I can't do it, when in fact, there's always going to be people in need. So you can do it too. There's room for you here too. But even in saying that, I feel like I have to follow it with what's important, especially in this work, in this community. Speaking of the trans community, is to find your passion, find something that you are good at, find something that you don't even have to think about it. You can snap your fingers and do, and make that your business to do that work. Don't seek out to do something just because you see somebody else doing it and you think, oh, I can do that too, because it will not sustain you. Your passion must sustain you. It must be, you got to be neurotic enough with that passion to keep going when this work gets you tired and wears you down, because it will. So the scarcity mindset has for me been unlearned in therapy. And I always tell other people, if you can, you know, get to a therapist, or, you know, have some good friends around you that can tell you no, or that's not a good idea, or, you know, that love you enough to tell you no and not be a mess and have you out here looking like a fool.
Okay, now it's
Yeah.
me. Yeah, that's true. We have to, like Derek say, I mean, we have to show the new generation that we can do something else. Like for us, you know, like I used to have a business. I used to have a working over there. I used to have have a good job. So sometimes I can understand when the girls say, oh, they don't accept me, they don't want me, they don't hire me. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, because for me, it was easy to be in the community, in my normal life. You know, I never have to go out the streets, and I don't have nothing with these girls. I mean, it's okay if they have to do it, but I always working for myself. If somebody didn't want to help me, I have to do it by myself. And also, other thing, I think we have to start to educate our families, because this is where we have to start. It's a lot of people that we still hiding everything from them, and then they know teaching, they know educate our parents, our brothers, our sisters, and they don't say anything. This is where they start to hate in the family, right? So I don't know. For me, it was easy to live over there. Was really nice. I have a good friends, like Derek said. I mean, I have a good people around me, and I always have a good life, and I don't have any problems, and I never feel any discrimination. I never. But the thing was, because I was honest with everybody. Even if you love me or you not love me, I was love myself. And that's it. And I was honest, I was open with everybody. I was showed them how was my life, you know, and I tried to break these opinions that a lot of people has about trans, because you know, sometimes the world, when they hear about trans, about gay people, about LGBT, they think only in drugs and prostitution, or or some or HIV. I mean, that's crazy. So we have to show them we can do better things like them, you know. So that's all. The only what I want to share.
Okay, thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
And I also wanted to pick up where Consuela talked about the brass rail that was on Fifth Street.
Yes.
I was one of the original brass rail queens up on 13th Street side, baby.
Right.
I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it too.
Right.
But that area has so changed. And even Franklin Park, where so many of us came out and met there, and we double dutched, and we just act like pure sissies, and we loved it. Because we were sissies then before we were trans, and we were faggies and queers and everything. And we finally made it to a respectable name, and that's the name that I carry on as a trans woman of color. Hopefully I can add respectful in there somewhere. I try to be respectful, but sometimes I'm pushed. I'm
So
pushed.
I just want to say that, you know, growing up in DC, I'm sorry, growing up in DC, and, you know, I'm tired of like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet, over a gunshot wound, where we understand that, you know, trans people, particularly like trans women of color, Black trans women, that live in wards 6, 7, and 8, get treated completely different than they do in wards 1 and 3.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, and I heard when and I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but when I heard Frida say that, you know, she's had every opportunity, sometimes we don't fail to realize that the color of our skin gets us through certain situations, and trans women who particularly have odds against them don't get the same opportunities that we do. And that's the part of cultural humility, like that, yeah, you know, all those resources are there for all of us to be successful, but sometimes you just want to be with people like yourself, you know, and to be with like people, particularly who dominate sex work, you know, there's a fine line that you choose what to do is right, and you choose to do what you feel is right at that moment, right? And I think that's an issue that we all talk about, that it is different living in Washington, D.C. and being a Black trans woman living in wards 6, 7, and 8. We know what the issues are. We know exactly what's taking place. And it's not my place, you know, being a Latina woman, only because I grew up with a lot of Black trans women, and I saw the disparity and I saw the issues that took place. I wasn't aware of what was taking place at that moment in time when it was happening. I understand now today, when I was 15 and I was 18 and 21, how I got treated in comparison to one of my trans sisters that were of darker complexion.
Okay. All right. Well, I too was saying how that location has been torn down to the ground. That renowned park that so many of us came out to and everything, and that's a hurting feeling to see how your history has been torn down brick by brick. Okay, well, we want to turn it on to one of our young community advocates that's doing things for the community on the Maryland side of the DMV, Miss Kanaya Walker. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, you got it just right. My name is Kanaya Walker. I'm the lead links to care navigator at Heart to Hand, and I'm not that young. But thanks.
Ow, ow.
But no, so yeah, I'm the lead linkage to care navigator at Heart to Hand. And just to kind of, I just kind of want to piggyback off of each of the panelists. First of all, of what Derek said about the whole thing of getting tired. Like that spoke to me so much because today was a day where I was tired. And my supervisor had to pull me to the side and she had to talk me back in. So that really hit home. And then when Kiara said that we have to not weaponize sex work, because I did sex work for 15 years. So all of my friends do sex work. They still do sex work now. Like, me living in Atlanta, for 10 plus years, we didn't have these opportunities that we have here because that's down south. So for me doing sex work for so long, like I have been in a lot of different situations. Like, I did sex work for so long, I never had an issue until I got to the age of 30. It was like when I got to the age of 30, everything just went to jail, back to back to back, held at gunpoint 2 or 3 times. So I did get to a place of where I was actually depressed and angry. For me, it wasn't even the fact that I was being held at gunpoint, because it was like, okay, I made it out. I still got to survive. But a lot of times I would get to myself and I was always angry. I was depressed, like just mad at the world because I knew that wasn't the life that I want to live. But even though I do this kind of work, and like Derek said, you get tired. I do get tired, especially when things don't go the way that I want them to go. But I know that I have a whole bunch of friends that are trans women. They still escort. So, I want to be an example to them. So that's why I keep going and going and going, because they know my story. They know where I came from. I was the person that always said, I'm never going to work a real job. Like, I make too much money to work a real job. So I don't think I'm going to be able to survive with a real job. But me moving, like the things that they offer in DC, they don't offer in Atlanta. You can barely get your name changed, jobs. You definitely not going to survive off of a job in Atlanta being a trans woman, because you're going to go and get paid $8, $9 an hour. And if you're doing sex work, who is going to stop doing sex work to make $8 or $9 an hour? Right. If that. So my passion is just to show my friends and my community that, it is a way out. Like, it is a better way. But I do feel like that, like Consuela said, I think that, some people do have it good because of the color of your skin, because me as a Black trans woman, you going somewhere and somebody telling you no one time, or somebody acting funny towards you one time, that's it for you. Like, you're not going to want to go back again. That's just like going to the doctor as being a trans woman and they misgender you. You're not going to want to go back again. It just takes that one time. So I think that's all I wanted to say.
Well, thanks for sharing. And Kiara, was that brief what you wanted to say?
Yeah,
Before we go to Taylor, go ahead.
Yeah, so who spoke before me?
Kanaya.
Kanaya, thank you, Kanaya. No, I think that's really important. And, I do feel that when we talk about sex work, there's layers to it, right? And understanding, like, one of the things how we talk about sex work in the positive is letting folks know, like, yeah, I make good money as a sex worker, right? But at the end of the day, that's not guaranteed money, right? It's not guaranteed money. And I don't get paid for my days off, right? And as I get older, what type of safety net do I have set up for me? And those are things that we have to have conversations with our sisters and our brothers too, because there's a lot of brothers and gender nonconforming folks engaged in sex work as well. We have to have those conversations with them. But also in regards to what Consuela brought up, there's also colorism. And anti-Blackness is not just from non-Black people. Anti-Blackness is also from Black people, right? And so there's always been layers of colorism in the African American community of who gets featured. We see this all the time in the ballroom community, who often gets featured and who often gets disparaged because they're darker skinned. And so we have to understand that though, that's why I'm very clear about saying Black and people of color, Black and people of color, Indigenous folks, because we have to be very clear that we don't get the same type of treatment simply because we're trans folk of color, right? We get very different treatment because you can be Black, but you can be light skinned and you get treated differently than someone who's dark skinned like me and other folks. And so it's really important to understand, that that comes into how Black trans women often we get dismissed when we talk about discrimination, because there's always, I had a good friend, I'm not gonna say her name, she's a white trans woman. And I remember at a group where she was the only white face in a Black and brown trans group. And we were talking about how hard it was to get a job when we first came to New York. And she, ever so blithely said, "Oh, I never had a problem. My first job in New York City was at Bloomingdale, right?" And we're like, "You're white with blonde hair and blue eyes. Of course you got a job at Bloomingdale's."
Yeah.
And she still didn't understand why we were upset with her for saying, "No, it's easy to get a job. It's easy. My first job." And so like it just speaks to how oftentimes that that sensitivity is not there when it comes to how hard it is to navigate these systems, because people, one of the reasons, and I'm going to shut up after this, but one of the reasons why I moved forward and founding my own organization was because I remember after being sick for a good minute, I was ready to get back into the field, get back into the work. And I went in because people encouraged me to go in for a very well-known organization, national organization here in New York City, located in New York City. And they wanted to have trans women. They were recruiting trans women to be part of a specific program with good pay and all of that. And so I went through 3 different interview processes, right? And it got down to me and 2 other people. And when it got back to me, so one of my girlfriends who actually was there during the process, she was saying that they were comparing me, because at that time I was not, I had stopped taking hormones and all of that. So I didn't look as, probably how I look. I don't know. I still feel like I look the same, but I look very different.
Right.
And so they were comparing me to like Janet Mock, right? They were comparing me as like, well, she doesn't seem polished. She doesn't have that look that we think can bring the girls in. Like we need someone who has like a Janet Mock type of look. And so it speaks to how even in spaces that they claim that they are looking to employ us, we are still discriminated against.
Yes.
And so, so there's a lot of organizations that say, oh no, we support and we stand with Black trans women, but not really if you don't look a certain way, if you don't look like a certain celebrity, and so those are real realities that a lot of us have to deal with, especially if we are on the darker hue of being.
Yes. Okay, thanks for sharing that. And that's so true. Because I know by me being in the federal government as a light-skinned person, opportunities were handed to me more than a brown-skinned person. And it goes to that movie, the Spike Lee movie about school days. So true. A lot of things are so true. And then that woman that also worked at Bloomingdale's, she would have no problem walking in any store and nobody rushing up to her and saying, "Can I help you? Can I help you?" And you turn the corner, "Can I help you? Can I help you?" Okay, well,
Savannah.
you're here at the time, and I would like to say for my offspring to talk. We've been waiting for my offspring to say a few words, and then we're going to go back to the next comment, and then we're going to let Miss Erica close us out. And if it's a prayer going on in somebody's mind, we will also put that on the floor too. But Taylor, go ahead, take it away, take it away.
I love you. And Kiara, you said you'd stop telling that story about me working at Bloomingdale's. I've had it with that story. You need to stop. You need to stop. You know, I feel like there's a safety in groups like this when we talk, but I want that safety to seep out into the masses. And this week has just been so troubling to me when we have Caitlyn Jenner as our spokesperson. And even though her and I share the same color skin, I can assure you our journeys couldn't be further apart from one another. And she's so contradicting. But one thing that I've heard in all this is, you know, I was homeless at 15. I put myself through college, you know, but I still did it being white. And in doing the work I do, I've learned to stay in the background or to bring my Black and brown siblings to the forefront and maybe create a space that they wouldn't normally be in, but tell their story. I can't tell it. But at the same time, there's no shame in work, whether it's sex work, whether it's, you know, and I get nervous when we do two things, talk about sex work as a negative. I don't think it should be the only option, but once again, there's no shame in work. And when you've been put out of your house and your education's been interrupted and all these things have happened, you know, your options are limited. So it's about breaking these barriers down in our own organizations and spreading it to make it easier for our trans brothers and sisters that are facing decades of systemic racism, and we're at an all-time high of white supremacy. I just don't want it to be a rite of passage anymore for a girl to have to do survival sex work. But at the same time, I see in my work where the girls that don't have sex work in their past or haven't been incarcerated, they're almost alienated too for not being like part of the club. And I think that's just as wrong too. I think if we start with sex positivity across the board, and like Consuela said in a past meeting, we need to stop going at each other because it makes it so much harder for people that don't have a trans family member or a friend or someone at work or at the bar to base anything on. And right now, we focus so much on services and funding for people living with HIV, and that is so wonderful. But there needs to be just as much funding for people that are neutral in their status, that need that help because they're facing, you know, a history of oppression at every level. And, you know, I want to see the voices that I see on this screen, not just on this screen in DC, but furthering into national platforms where we're changing policy, where we're fighting back against someone like a Caitlyn Jenner saying trans girls in sports are really biological males. There's something about that wording that's so derogatory, and the way it's said, it's like you're shooting us in the foot coming out of the gate. And
Yes.
She is not our spokesperson. I don't know her. I don't want to know her. I won't misgender her, but let's be real. She lived as a white, privileged, conservative, Republican man for 66 years. Just because she got a slit between her legs isn't going to change her mental thinking. She's still all about being a man's man. And I mean that in no derogatory, misgendering way, but that's the reality. Their MAGA is going to use her to destroy us just because they'd rather have that than any of us with real life experience that can talk to what we've gone through to bring about change. And I guarantee you, Erica will agree with me, the thing that's left on the floor every day, all day, is mental health. You know, when you're homeless or suffering or dealing with past trauma, the last thing you're thinking about is mental health. When you're hungry, mental health, no. You know, when you've resorted to coping mechanisms like drinking or substance abuse, those come about from the trauma. And yet we're looked at like we're bad people because of these being our coping skills. And so what if we're prostitutes? So what if we're kikiing and loud and obnoxious and throw our wig off and take a piss in the street? That doesn't matter. That's not the reasons to judge people. And why it's so important for America to know what's between our legs, to like or accept us, is just comedy if you think about it. But yet here we are. We're in the battle of our life. And the only part of the Equality Act that is stopping from being passed is they want to remove the trans protections. Trans kids, litmus test. Let me see your genitals. What do you got down there? If you're young and on blockers and transitioned early, you're outing people that probably nobody knew. So that's my 2 cents. But I love you all. And Kira, stop telling that goddamn story about Bloomingdale's.
I won't. This will be my last time, sis. Love you.
Well, thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Taylor.
Can
Erica,
I say something?
who was that speaking?
Nikki Lane.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Nikki. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree with everything that's being said. And I myself, I'm a brown-skinned African-American or a Black woman, post-op transsexual. I've worked in the government for the last 30 years. But I've done other things prior to that and alongside of that. And I think that, you know, the thing that's going to make things change further than they already are is the collaboration with other organizations, the other people on this panel, so that you can leverage your funding sources and your dollars to accomplish even more, not just in your city or your county, but across the nation and across the states. So that's one piece of it. And demanding more from the existing programs that say they serve LGBTQ, as well as if you have a program, looking for those additional funding sources, grants, what have you, fundraising activities that can get more funding set aside and allocated for teaching young youth that they can do more than sex work. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. We all have to survive. But sometimes just giving them the opportunity through apprenticeships, through internships, paid or unpaid, that you fund, and giving them those additional skills that can just show them that even if you don't stop doing that, add on to what you can do, so that if there is an opportunity, you're ready for it, and you maybe can vacillate into something else where you maybe still continue some sex work, but you're maybe working part-time somewhere else. And as times go on, you might find that you can, I don't know, move up in the ranks or find other jobs where you can supplement that income. But just looking at how you can expand, because we are expansive human beings. So giving them more skills and exposing them to all of those things so they can see a future and have a chance to just build themselves out where, yes, if I engage in sex work, yes, I do that, but I also know how to do this, and I also know how to do that, so that you can be and encourage them to go to trade schools, be that you know what I'm trying to say, cosmetology, or, you know, whatever it might be, or if it's HVAC repair, I don't know, just, you know, look at different CNA, you know, that's a good job. And no, a lot of them don't necessarily pay a fortune, but it's guaranteed work that you can many times take from state to state wherever you move. and it supplements your income, and it gives you an opportunity to have that, as well as if you're engaging in sex work. You have 2 or 3 things going on, 2 or 3 different incomes, 2 or 3 sources. So building out on that, and if we have programs looking at how we can build on the housing and the mental health services and the life skills training and the job readiness skills and all of that, from mock interviews to resume writing and applying for jobs electronically, but looking at all that and demanding more from those existing programs that say they serve us, but they barely have staff that look like us. And, so it's so many things. There's a multi-pronged approach, but just looking at all of those pieces and how we can build on it and how we can give each youth an opportunity to just expand on what they know and what they do, to add something else to their repertoire.
Yes.
And just keep moving in that way. And know that every last one of you all on this panel are a role model. And even though you might not know it, and someone may not even say it to you, just seeing you, just you being visibly there, shows already that yes, there are things beyond sex work or beyond this or that. So, we just all have to keep working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Erica, if you could go ahead and say a few words if you like to, and then Frida, you can go right after her, okay?
Okay.
So, Savannah, first of all, thank you so much for organizing this and the entire month's worth of events. I'm always blown away by you every day, all day.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and for opening this up to cis folks and just to, to communities at large nationwide. I absolutely loved everything that everyone was saying. All of that resonated with me, the importance of getting support within the TGNB and TGNC community, schools, our religious communities, workplaces, regardless of what they might be, and also legally and politically. And of course, the thing that makes me sad really is that you're all perfect the way you are, right? And it's not, you're here doing the work, but it's not you who has to do the work, right? It's cis people who have to do the work. Like, it's not Black people's job and BIPOC people's job to do the work of anti-racism. That's white people that need to do that work. And so I'm sorry that there's not more cis people here tonight. Derek had mentioned benefiting from mental health services, and I'm so glad that that's been the case for you. And I know that, I don't remember who it was, but someone else had mentioned like getting misgendered at clinics, and absolutely. With mental health services, just like any other doctor appointment, like it's gonna sometimes be hit or miss. You won't get the right person on the first shot. And so I got here late, so I apologize if if someone already spoke to this earlier when I wasn't here. But one thing that I've noticed in the past several years with mental health care is that there's a lot of folks they're LGBTQ friendly. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have expertise. And that even if they have expertise with LGB folks, they don't necessarily have expertise in working with trans people. However, there are lots of people who do. And so I just encourage you to, when you're looking for mental health services, find someone who's not just friendly, but who has expertise in not just working with trans people, because you're not a monolith, but someone who has the expertise and the experience in working with whatever is most relevant for you with regard to your own intersectionality, whether that's race, age, religion, work, other mental health stuff that might be going on, whether you have a health goal or struggles with substance abuse, whatever it may be, finding someone. It's okay to grill them on a consultation. How many Black trans women have you worked with? And how many of them had panic attacks or this thing or that thing? It's absolutely okay to ask those questions. And if someone's not getting you what you need, it's, keep on looking, because there's people out there who very much so care about your life and have the skills and compassion that you deserve. And I think it's also, lastly, I'll just say it can be hard because by the time we're reaching out for mental health services, usually we're kind of in a place, maybe we're like really depressed or we're kind of at wit's end. And so that can be the hardest time to like put forth all that effort to do the searching and all of that. And so if there's anyone in your life who you can have do some of that legwork for you, calling around to check out people's expertise ahead of time so you don't have to, it can feel quite vulnerable to do that. But again, thank you for having me. I hope that all of you can get what you need, and that, you know, and always whenever there's anything I can do to support, please, please, please do let me know. But thank you all.
Okay. Okay, Frida, go ahead. And then we have a half a minute sponsor clip to show. Go ahead, Frida.
Okay, the only thing that I want to say is here in Mexico, the most murders for trans is because they lie. Most of the girls that they do prostitution, they've been lying, and they say like they're real women, and then they find out, and then they know, and then the guys, they find out they are transgenders. So in 2005, over there in Washington, D.C., one of my best friends, she got killed because it was the same thing. So the thing that I want to say is like, well, we don't have to lie. We just have to accept who we are. And it's a lot of guys that they love us, you know? It's a lot of guys that they looking for us. And I want to share this because we talk about a lot of things about prostitution, about work, about this or this. But some of these things, that the fact is that, like, we've been lying, you know, for some people. That's all.
Okay. All right.
Savannah, Consuela had something she wanted to say too.
Okay, Consuela, right after that, thank you. Now, y'all know that tomorrow is our mental health. Tomorrow's our mental health segment. If you would like to go deeper into the mental health topic, come on and join us. Consuela, go ahead and say whatever you like to say, and thank everybody for participating. It's been wonderful. And I hope everyone has felt right at home and welcomed and had an opportunity to express what they wanted to express. I hope I have not missed any hand that was raised. And there you are, Consuela. Thank y'all for participating.
So I put in the chat where I said trans resumes in DC, and I wanted to have a chance to talk about it. It's not that I'm promoting it. I am so against it because it showed the racial disparity in Washington, DC, even for an educated transgender woman. So over 60% of businesses in Washington, DC, through the Department of Human Rights, they did a study called Trans Resumes, and they sent out resumes to organizations and businesses and identified as trans individuals and gender nonconforming through the resume, through indicating through the name, right? To say, hey, my name was George, and now I go as Maria or something, whatever. And over, I think 60 to 70%, 60%, I'm sorry, of businesses chose someone that was not transgender or identified as gender nonconforming. And to make the racial disparity even more, that I just found out last year, is that they didn't even include people of color. So therefore, there were no names that indicated that you were a person of color. They were all, you know, names that were white associated to try to get you in the door, and you still were discriminated against. So that shows you exactly that the racial disparity that takes place in our community alone through the government. So, you know, when I hear, I heard Nikki say something, which the cosmetology, that's what got me through, right? Through the beauty school. And I've had conversations with council members where through the Project Empowerment job program, they didn't hire us. That we went through the whole training, and then we went to different organizations down on, like, you know, by the White House or downtown, and we went in and had interviews, but they didn't hire us. How come they didn't hire us? Right? We had the qualifications, we had, you know, the skill set, and we had the paperwork that now indicated that we were qualified for a particular job as an entry-level administrative assistant, and we still weren't given the opportunity. So when that happened, and then the DC Office of Human Rights did that study of trans resumes, it just shows you the racial disparity where they didn't even include people of color. And that's all I wanted to say. And I wanted to backtrack on my chat, because I was like, oh, you know, it's not that I was for it. It shows you the racial disparity that Black transgender women still face today within the last couple of years of what it is. Just because of the color of your skin, you don't get the same opportunities and you get treated differently. That's real. That's not something that you know, that just happens and people don't pay attention to it. We really need to focus on that. And, you know, I don't want to be in a space where I can speak for someone, but I see it and I'm like, this is what's happening. Like, you know, if I were to go into that thing, yeah, they would probably look at me and be like, okay, if she's bilingual, she speaks, blah, blah, we'll give her the job, you know? But if my trans sister with a darker complexion comes in, the same qualifications, they're not going to give her the same opportunity. And that's just real, and that's horrible. It's horrible to say, but it's true, and it's real, and this is what happens right here in the nation's capital. And here you have government agencies like DC Office of Human Rights, which I'm a trans respect girl, I've been through the government, but it shows you within the last 3 years, they just did this trans resumes, and they didn't even include people of color. So that shows you the racial disparity today that my sisters, Black transgender women, go through at today's age. And I, you know, and I'm tired of not having those uncomfortable conversations, because this is the only way that we're going to be able to come together and really support, you know, my trans sisters, particularly my Black trans sisters that are suffering way more than just because of the color of their skin. So I'm sorry.
And then
Thank you.
those are avenues why we are driven out to make our own means of survival. Drugs, prostitution, stealing, boosting. I used to love me a booster too, honey. Let me stop being bad. But you know, at Christmas time, we look for them. You know it.
I would just say that still it makes sense to still go and try to achieve as much as you can. If you go to trade schools for cosmetology, CNA, you know, go to community colleges, things, because one thing for sure, if you have the time, what else are you doing? So why not build upon your skills? Even if someone doesn't hire you here or hire you there, they can't take away your education or what you expose yourself to, and someone will hire you somewhere. But you just want to build and keep growing, because it builds on your self-esteem, it builds on your self-worth, and it shows that, you know, given the chance, you will take any opportunity to make your life better. So I would always encourage anyone to, you know, do everything you can and expose yourself to as much as you can. And don't just say, oh, this is the world, and, you know, if there are no opportunities and we're discriminated against. Yes, all of that is true, but still go for everything you can to expand on your skills and your capabilities, because somewhere, somehow, the universe is going to present an opportunity that you might be in position to take.
Nikki, I just want to say something that is so wonderful that you mentioned that. As you see, I was a political appointee for the mayor's office. I've spoken to council members, And I went and spoke to council members particularly and said to them, I said, you know what, even though this is not unfair for me to say because this is what I experienced, I said, let's meet the people where they're at, right? If you don't want if you don't want a trans woman of color sitting as a basic entry-level administrative assistant at a law firm or at a nonprofit organization that's, you know, on Pennsylvania Avenue down the street from the White House, how come you don't want us sitting in an office, but you will let us cut your hair and do your makeup? So therefore, with the job with the job money that's coming into Washington, DC, right? Let's build it where people where they will allow us in. Like you said, cosmetology, plumbing, all these other things that actually make you money, right? That will sustain you from sex work, because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to turn a trick within an hour and then, you know, and then go and have a minimum wage. You know, I do, Taylor. I didn't also just work at that Bloomingdale's. I also did everything. I did. So I know what it's like to charge $300 to $450 an hour, right? And then go for an entry-level position where you're getting paid $9.25, $10.25, right? And I know what that feels like, right? But I made more money being a cosmetology because those people accepted me and allowed me to be myself, an openly trans woman, freshly transitioned, coming to work, not being fully passable, you know, during that transition moment. But you allowed me to do your hair. You allowed me to put makeup on you. And that was money, that was a skill, that was money making. But how come today, still today, even though as a whole, you know, Black trans women have it the worst, but as trans women, period, they still don't want us in those offices, working with those attorneys and those, you know, and yeah, they'll give one girl out of 100 girl opportunity, an opportunity to go work, right? And then you become that token trans girl. But in the beauty industry, and I only can speak for myself, we dominate, right? They want to go to us because they'll be like, oh, you know, they make us pretty, they make us beautiful, like blah, blah, you know, we have that different eye, we have whatever comes with being, you know, part of that beauty industry that allows us to become honest tax-paying citizens, that allow us to get off of the streets, you know, to going from sex work into an actual honest tax-paying citizen, like a job. So it's not that I'm sitting here saying, oh my God, you know, don't try this, don't try that. But we have to really understand where people are today and how they're treating trans women, particularly trans women of color. And if we don't acknowledge, and which we do, we understand and we don't do something about it and have those uncomfortable conversations, it's not going to change.
Right. Okay, well, this has been a lovely conversation. Kiara, I know you want to say something, but let me let the ASL people leave, and whoever would like to hang on, they can hang on. Let's give them a hand for helping us wonderfully. That opened up another avenue where someone will not be discriminated against our conversation. So that's why we have monies in place so that everyone can be included. So thank you, my LS American Sign Language people. I know y'all about tired, and if I was able to give y'all a hand massage right now, I would do it. But thank y'all very much, and we will see you the next time. If y'all would like to continue talking, we can. It's just that I wanted to let them go. Now, Kiara, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, I think it's really important that we start to reimagine employment and what employment looks like. And so definitely one of the things that I'm working on also here in New York City, New York State, I'm working with my senator here in Flatbush, Brooklyn Center, Kevin Parker, on a universal basic income bill, which he is sponsoring. And so definitely we need to make sure that when we think about how we're going to come out on the other end of COVID, it has to include something such as universal basic income, because a lot of the employment opportunities that we once had available to us, they are no more. you know, a lot of TGNC folks who were outreach workers, they're not able to do that, at least not here in New York City. And so we need to make sure that we're reimagining, but also petitioning and letting folks know that there is opportunities for all of us to make a living, you know, have access to housing, access to healthcare, and it's called UBI. I'm gonna keep on pushing that. And yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, I see that this is a conversation that we need to add again. We need to have again soon. And I know in July, we will have a conversation that needs to be talked about, and it's called trans independence. So get ready for that, because we have a dynamite team that's going to lead that discussion too. So thank y'all again, and any last closing moments or anything for now, forever hold your peace, because we get ready to hit end all. Thank you. An email will come to the panelists about a little bit of greenery, a little gift, about a gift. So look out for that email. Look out for that one, baby.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye,
so
I love
much.
y'all. Nikki, I'm
Love
glad
you,
you made it.
everybody.
I'm glad you made it, good Nikki.
I am too. I really enjoyed it. I'll be
Good,
back
good, good.
tomorrow.
Okay, good, wonderful. Y'all take care. Free to be well now. Tell them
Okay.
thank you, baby. My offspring, everybody.
Rita, happy Cinco de Mayo.
Oh yeah,
Oh, that's
happy Cinco de
true.
Mayo.
You're in Mexico. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Bye. Now let me see how I stop this recording and save it this time. The ALSL people stay till the bitter end. I love y'all.